Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Buffalo SportsCenter. I am Don, and today we are going to discuss all of the picks the Bills made in this very eventful 2024 NFL Draft. The Bills had a lot of picks this year, and they also accumulated more picks for next year, as Brandon Beane, general manager, looks to transition this team from one era into the next. But before I get into all of the picks that the Bills made and who they are, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Follow us on Instagram, Discord, Threads, TikTok, you know the shebang. Do that all. All of those links are in the description down below. Now, let's get started here with today's picks, and we'll start off with a wide receiver. Yeah, the Bills did draft, finally, a wide receiver after trading back not once, but twice. Out of the first round, they picked up the first pick in the second round, and they used pick 33 to select Keon Coleman, wide receiver out of Florida. And this was a very interesting pick. There were other options on the board. The Bills, even when they traded back twice, and the other teams then used those two picks to go pick up Xavier Legette. He went to Carolina Panthers, and then Xavier Worthy was drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs. So a lot of Bills fans were kind of confused as to why the hell Brandon Beane would help out two other teams get wide receivers they wanted. But I feel like it's more indicative of how they felt about this wide receiver class. They clearly weren't impressed by Xavier Worthy. They must think he must be the next John Ross. I personally agree with that statement. I think Xavier Worthy is kind of overhyped. Now, Xavier Legette was kind of interesting because he is a physical monster. He is a Southern Cowboy too. He's got that charm as well, but I don't know. The Bills really did not want to take any of those guys. They didn't really have any first-round grades, I suppose, at that point in the draft, especially after Brian Thomas got drafted a couple picks earlier. But it was also interesting. The Bills didn't, from what Brandon Beane did say in his press conference that evening, the Bills didn't even try to trade up aggressively that night. So they clearly weren't impressed by the receivers placed in front of them. They traded back twice. They got a true X receiver here with Keon Coleman, one of the best 50-50 catchers I've seen coming out of this class. He's got very good yards after catch abilities as well. That's one of the things that Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott have stressed over the last two seasons. It's guys that can make plays after the catch. He's got average deep speed. That was one of the big points of contention. The Bills didn't really add any speed to their wide receiver room. I mean, they have some speed already with Shakir on the roster, Curtis Samuel's on the roster, KJ Hamler's on the roster as well, but Coleman could be a nice complement to all those guys. He's not necessarily known as the fastest receiver. His 40-yard dash time was not very impressive. It was only a 4.61. His GPS time was much faster, though, placing in the low 4.50s. And, the stats as well at Florida were not the most impressive, only 658 yards, but he did get 11 touchdowns. So clearly his potential in the red zone is huge, and Josh Allen did vouch for him. So we'll see how good of a fit this is. This was a very interesting pick, though, for the Bills. But let's move on now to what I think was the best pick of the draft for Buffalo. They got their top safety, Cole Bishop, out of Utah. He's a very versatile defender who can play at all three levels of the defense. He's very good at recognizing routes, what's about to happen. He can diagnose plays easily. And if that sounds familiar, if it sounds like Micah Hyde, there's a reason for that. Cole Bishop was a captain at Utah, and you'll notice as I go through all these picks, a bunch of these guys were leaders at the colleges they played at. So the Bills really are bringing in the next round, I think, of leaders on this team after getting rid of Mitch Morse, who was a captain, Stephon Diggs, captain, Gabe Davis was a captain, Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde were both veteran leaders on this team. The Bills, and Tre'Davious White, too, was a captain. So the Bills got rid of a lot of their captains from last season, but they're bringing in a new era, a new, fresh batch of leaders that could help push this Bills team forward. I think Cole Bishop will be a very good complement playing with Taylor Rapp in the back of the safety room. And let's continue on now. Let's talk about what I thought was the most perplexing pick of the draft for Buffalo. They got Dwayne Carter, D-tackle, who's pretty good. He's got some good quickness. He's got decent arm length as well. But I don't necessarily know about this pick. I mean, you can see at the bottom of the screen, the Bills could have probably double-dipped a wide receiver, and that's what I personally wanted them to do. Javon Baker was still on the board at that point. Jalen Polk, he was on the board earlier in day 2, but I believe, I can't remember exactly where he went to off the top of my head. I remember him going a little bit sooner in the second round, so I'm just kind of confused why on day 2 the Bills did not trade up and go get and double dip at wide receiver, but they did take defensive tackle Dwayne Carter, and this is going to be some good depth. But the problem was last season wasn't his best. He had a significant dip in tackles for loss and sacks. So, not great. He has a habit of standing up out of his stance too and playing with a narrow base. So that means he can get pushed around a whole lot easier than some other tackles. So, and you know what? Sean McDermott does have a good track record of developing guys on the defensive line. Not quite as good of a track record as is his work with the linebackers or the secondary, but it's still okay enough. I think they can develop Carter to be a good rotational tackle for Buffalo. Let's continue on now and go into some of our lower picks here in the draft. We'll start off with a very exciting running back out of Kentucky, Ray Davis. He's a true bull-nosed rusher. He is, I think, the perfect complement to James Cook. James Cook will be your shifty, quick, lots of speed, lots of vision in his runs. Ray Davis, just powerful, straight up and down, north to south kind of runner. He will plow his way through a couple of defenders. He will break tackles. He doesn't have the craziest home run ability, and his vision is okay. He's got below average explosiveness in space though, but that's not necessarily what the Bills are drafting him for. He's basically going to be the Latavius Murray replacement for this upcoming season. And I thought Latavius Murray, for what he did, what his role was, he had a solid season with the Bills. But let's translate what he did into the body of a much younger, young 20, fresh buck out of Kentucky. I think that is going to be fantastic for Buffalo. I love the fit of Ray Davis here. He'll be a very good RB3 to start the season, and then probably he will eventually morph into the second running back here for the Buffalo Bills. And now, these next two picks, I think, have the coolest names of any draft pick the Bills have selected. In the 5th round, the Bills selected center Cedric Van Pran Granger out of Georgia. How can you ever go wrong with a lineman out of Georgia, though? It's pretty tough to do. They're always safe, reliable picks, and that, I think, is the overarching theme for this draft. Brandon Beane didn't really push it with any crazy potential projects. No, he played it very safe, sturdy, good track record of prospects. And notice as well, a lot of these guys did participate in the Senior Bowl. So if you don't think that game has any meaning left, and that event doesn't have any meaning left, well, you know, the Bills really did take notice of the guys that participated in that particular event. And with Van Pran Granger, he's a very skilled run blocker, solid initial quickness, and what this pickup does tell me, plus the pickup of Leo Collins earlier, a couple weeks ago, is that the Bills are really going to specialize in running the rock this season with James Cook, Ty Johnson, and Ray Davis. I think the Bills will be utilizing a whole lot more of the run, and we'll see. And even with Josh Allen too. Josh Allen, we know he can use his legs as well. But the Bills are going to be a very big running team this season. So hey, if you're a fantasy drafter for this upcoming season, take a Bills running back. It's probably going to be a wise investment. And then we move on to pick 160, Edefwan Uloficio, linebacker. And this is another really exciting pickup for the Bills. They'll get some more linebacking depth, and the Bills are going to have one of the youngest linebacking cores in the NFL. They drafted Uloficio this year. They drafted Dorian Williams last year. They brought in Nathan Nicholas Morrow out of Philly. I don't know why I got his name confused there for a moment, but this is going to be a very new, very young, very good linebacking core. And what you notice about all these guys, good movement skills, they're all a little bit undersized too, much like in the same vein as Matt Milano. And I like it. They're all high Q as well, and they all could be leaders. That's another thing he keeps saying over and over again. The Bills are drafting good locker room guys who fit with the culture and can be leaders on this team. So that's going to be a huge aspect for the Bills. Now, let's continue on, folks, and talk a little bit about the final couple of picks here for the Bills in this draft. In this 5th round, pick 168, shortly after Uloficio, the Bills went out and got another edge rusher, Javon Solomon. Another rotational guy. I still don't think the D-line room for the Bills is all quite impressive. We'll have to see if they can really transform Solomon into a solid rotational edge rusher, especially with how bad Von Miller was last season. This is still a huge concern for this Bills team going into the season. But Solomon was a very good off-the-line scrimmage rusher. He was good out of a two-point stance. He sets up his pass rush moves well by getting to square and or using a Euro step. So he could be fancy with his footwork, but he's still kind of short for an NFL edge. He's a little bit smaller, so hopefully he doesn't get tossed around by some of these bigger offensive linemen in the NFL. And we continue on. Round 6, pick 204. The Bills got Tylen Grable, defensive tackle. Grable. And he's easy. He's got light feet. He's got loose hips to redirect. And he'll bring in some more depth at the D-line position. The Bills really focused, hemmed in on the defense like they normally do in the draft. In the 6th round as well, the Bills got Daquan Hardy, cornerback, who is kind of a flyer. He's very kind of small for a cornerback position, and I think it's going to be very tough for him to make this Bills team right out of training camp. And then finally, and I saved this guy for last, of course, not just because he was the last Bills pick in this draft, but also he's got a cool story, and it's Travis Clayton, the British offensive tackle, came to the NFL through the International Pathway Program, the IPP, which means he is exempt from traditional practice squad roster limits and rules. So if the Bills do want to keep him around, much like Christian Wade, we can go over that initial roster limit of 15. We can keep him, and I like him. Will he make the team? Probably not, but it's a cool story. Came over, former rugby player. He's a big guy, and I did see a couple videos out there of his friends back in England all getting hyped for him. That's a cool story. Great guy. Now, if he does make the team, it'd be very cool. It'd be very nice, but given all the depth that the Bills currently have in that O-line room right now, especially with some of the free agent additions, plus what the Bills have done earlier in this draft, it's going to be an uphill battle for him. But, folks, let me know what you think of this 2024 Bills draft class. Did Brandon Beane cook? Was he being a big baller Beane, or was he too conservative for your liking? And did you not like the draft overall? Let me know in the comment section. But anyways, folks, I was Don. This is Buffalo SportsCenter. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe, and I hope to see all of you in the next video. Peace out.